They mocked the human without a badge, until the royal guard saluted him. I want to tell you about the night I learned that everything I believed about power was wrong. My name is Keth Varanus. I am a Silathi, a junior trade delegate, and at the time of this story, I was attending my very first sovereign summit on the throne world of Aetheris. I was young, I was eager, and I was a fool. You need to understand something about the summit to understand what happened. Every 10 years, representatives from over 400 species gather in the Grand Conclave Hall, a massive chamber carved from living crystal that hums with a frequency you can feel in your bones. Ambassadors, generals, merchant lords, intelligence officers, the most powerful beings in the known galaxy, all in one room, and every single one of them wears a badge of station. The badge is everything. It is a bio-encoded holographic emblem worn on the chest, and it broadcasts your rank, your species authority, and your political clearance to anyone who looks at you. There are 15 tiers. A level 1 badge means you are a clerk. A level 15 means you answer only to the Sovereign Empress herself. My badge was a level 4. Modest, barely worth noticing, but I wore it with such pride that night, because without a badge, you are nobody. You are not even supposed to pass through the outer gates. That is why the human caught my attention. He was standing near the back wall of the hall, alone, a male, somewhere in his middle years by human standards, with a calm, unremarkable face. He wore a simple dark coat over plain clothes, no embroidery, no species insignia, no entourage, and on his chest, nothing. No glow, no hologram, no badge at all. I stared at him the way you stare at something that should not exist. Everyone inside that hall had a badge. Everyone. The security protocols alone should have made it impossible for a badgeless individual to enter. I assumed he was a lost maintenance worker, or perhaps a servant who had wandered through the wrong door. I almost felt sorry for him. I was not the only one who noticed. A cluster of high-ranking delegates had gathered near the center of the hall, and their attention had already found the human. I recognized them by their badges. Commander Droth, a Vorkani warlord with a level 12 badge, and ritual scars across his jaw. Merchant Prince Isal of the Dravine Consortium, level 11, draped in silk that probably cost more than my annual salary. And Navek, a Thessic intelligence officer, level 10, whose pale eyes never seemed to blink. Commander Droth spoke first, and he did not bother to lower his voice. "Is the little Terran lost?" he said, grinning with a mouth full of sharp teeth. "Someone should call pest control." His retinue of junior officers laughed on cue, the way subordinates always laugh when a powerful person makes a joke. Merchant Prince Yisal tilted his elongated head and added his own observation. "Humans barely qualified for sovereignty membership 30 years ago," he said. "Their planet does not even control a full star system. Perhaps this one wandered in looking for a food dispenser." More laughter. Navek, the Thessic, was quieter, but somehow crueler. He leaned toward the others and murmured, just loud enough for nearby delegates to hear, "Badgeless creatures belong in cargo holds. Someone should remove him before he embarrasses the event." I stood there, watching, and I said nothing. The human heard all of it. I know he did, because the hall carries sound in strange ways, and they were not trying to be subtle. But his expression did not change. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the room with dark, steady eyes, as if he were studying the weather. When he tried to walk toward the central floor, 2 of Droth's officers stepped into his path, blocking him casually, the way you might block a stray animal from entering a building. The human stopped. He looked at them. He said, very politely, "Excuse me." They did not move. He did not ask again. He simply waited. I felt something twist in my stomach. It was second-hand shame, though at the time I told myself it was pity. This poor human was clearly out of his depth. He had no authority, no status, no protection in this room full of galactic predators. I thought about stepping forward, about saying something decent, but then I looked down at my level 4 badge and decided that I could not afford to associate with a badgeless nobody. I am not proud of that decision. Things got worse. Commander Droth, emboldened by the laughter and the silence of the room, walked up to the human and placed his massive clawed hand on the man's shoulder. Droth towered over him by nearly 2 feet. "Let me help you find the exit, little creature," he said, already steering the human toward the doors. The human looked down at the clawed hand on his shoulder. He did not try to remove it. He just looked up into the Vorkani's face and said, in a voice so quiet that I had to strain to hear it, "You will want to take your hand off me, Commander. That is not a request." There was no anger in his tone, no fear, no bluster. It was the voice of someone stating a simple, obvious fact, the way you might say that water is wet. And something about it made the room shift. I saw Droth's grip loosen, just slightly. The warlord's grin faltered for half a second before he forced it back. But he did not let go. His pride would not allow it. More eyes turned toward them. The confrontation was becoming a scene. I held my breath. And then the doors opened. Not the side doors, not the service entrances, the grand doors, the towering crystal gates at the far end of the hall that only opened for one reason: the Aetherian Royal Guard. 12 of them marched in, and the sound of their armored boots striking the crystal floor was like a heartbeat. They were enormous, 8 feet tall, encased in ceremonial armor that gleamed like liquid silver, their faces hidden behind mirrored visors. Each one was a veteran of campaigns that most species only read about in history texts. They answered to no one in the galaxy except the Sovereign Empress herself. The hall fell silent. Completely, instantly silent, the way a room full of children goes quiet when a parent walks in. The Royal Guard never entered the conclave hall during the gathering phase. Their presence meant something extraordinary was happening. The Guard commander stepped forward. He was the largest of the 12, and his armor bore etched markings that I later learned represented 3 galactic campaigns. He surveyed the room slowly, his mirrored visor sweeping across hundreds of the most powerful beings in known space. Then he walked forward, past the ambassadors, past the warlords, past the merchant princes and the intelligence officers, and the admirals with their level 13 and level 14 badges glowing like small suns on their chests. He walked directly to the human. He stopped exactly 1 pace away. And then the Guard commander placed his gauntleted fist over his chest, the Aetherian royal salute. I had studied protocol for months before the summit. I knew what that salute meant. It is reserved only for members of the sovereign household or individuals of equivalent authority. It is the highest honor the Aetherian military can offer. "Commander Hale," the Guard commander said, and his voice echoed through the frozen hall. "The Empress sends her welcome. She awaits you in the inner sanctum at your convenience." Behind him, the other 11 guards followed, fist to chest. Heads bowed, 12 of the most feared soldiers in the galaxy, saluting a man in a plain dark coat. I will never forget the look on Commander Droth's face. His hand fell away from the human's shoulder, as if the man's coat had suddenly turned to fire. Droth stepped back. His jaw hung open. For the first time in my life, I saw a Vorkani warlord look afraid. The human, Commander Hale, simply nodded to the Guard commander. "Thank you, Captain," he said, in exactly the same quiet, polite voice he had used all evening. "Please tell Her Majesty I will be there shortly." Then he straightened his coat where Droth had crumpled it, and walked toward the grand doors. The 12 guards fell into formation around him, and together, they disappeared into the corridor beyond. The hall erupted. Every delegate in the room was querying their data links, pulling up classified files, trying to find out who this man was. I did the same, and what I found, in fragments, in half-redacted files, in whispered conversations with terrified senior diplomats over the next few hours, changed the way I see the universe. His name was Elias Hale. He did not carry a badge because his clearance level was above the badge system. I did not even know such a thing was possible. The badge system has 15 tiers. Hale operated at a level that did not have a number. His authority was verified by the Empress's own personal cryptographic seal, something that, until that night, I did not know existed. The things he had done were almost too large to believe. 12 years before the summit, a rogue artificial intelligence fleet, from the outer dissolution, had threatened to breach the sovereignty's core systems. 3 full battle fleets had failed to stop it. Hale, then a mid-ranking tactical officer, had devised a strategy based on something humans call chaos doctrine, a military philosophy built on unpredictability and creative adaptation. He led a volunteer force of 40 ships against 3,000. And he won, not through superior firepower, but by thinking in a way the machines could not predict. The galaxy learned something that day. Humanity's greatest weapon was not technology. It was the sheer unpredictability of the human mind. 8 years before the summit, a secret faction within the Thessic government had developed a biological agent, aimed at the Dravine homeworld, an act that would have triggered a galactic conflict. Hale had infiltrated the operation alone, disguised as a cargo hauler for 7 months, and dismantled it from the inside. The Thessic public never learned how close they came to becoming a pariah species. The Dravine never learned how close they came to losing their world. Navek, the Thessic officer who had suggested Hale belonged in a cargo hold, owed his species' reputation to this man. Esau, the Dravine merchant prince who had mocked him, owed his species' survival to him. And the Vorkani. 7 years ago, Hale had personally negotiated the ceasefire between the Vorkani Dominion and the Etherian sovereignty, ending a conflict that had raged for 2 decades. He did it by spending a full year living among the Vorkani warrior clans, learning their codes, earning their respect through their sacred trials of endurance and honor. He bore Vorkani ritual markings on his arms, markings that Commander Droth would recognize as the sacred signs of a clan brother. By Vorkani law, laying hands on a clan brother without invitation is one of the deepest possible dishonors. Not to the brother, but to the one who did it. Droth figured that out before I did. I later saw him standing alone in a corridor, staring at his own hands. He requested a private audience with Hale. It was granted. I never learned what happened in that meeting, but when Droth emerged, he looked like a different person. Humbled. Quiet. For the rest of the summit, he referred to Hale only as Brother of the Scar, and he never raised his voice again. Merchant Prince Yisal received a polite visit from a protocol officer who explained, in careful detail, exactly how many Dravine lives Hale had personally saved. Yisal sent an elaborate gift to Hale's quarters. It was returned, unopened, with a handwritten note that read, "Your gratitude is unnecessary. Your respect for those without badges would mean more." Navek, the Thessic officer, simply vanished from the summit. I heard later that he had requested a transfer to a remote outpost on the edge of known space. Whether it was from shame or from fear, I never found out. And what about me? I did nothing wrong that night, in the technical sense. I did not mock the human. I did not block his path. I did not lay a hand on him, but I also did not speak up. I stood there, with my little level 4 badge glowing on my chest, and I watched a man be humiliated, and I chose silence, because I did not want to risk my standing for someone I believed was beneath me. That is a kind of failure that no badge can fix. I saw Hale one last time that night. It was late. The hall was nearly empty. He was standing by one of the great crystal windows, looking out at the stars, still wearing the same plain clothes, still no badge. A junior cleaning worker, a small, insectoid Kellis barely 3 feet tall, approached him nervously and asked if the honored sir needed anything. Hale smiled at the worker. It was the first genuine, warm expression I had seen on his face all evening. "No, thank you," he said. "But that is a fine polish you have put on these floors. Best I have ever seen." The little Kellis practically glowed with pride and hurried away, delighted. I watched that moment, and I finally understood. Hale did not perform kindness for the powerful. He offered it naturally, instinctively, to the people everyone else overlooked, the people without badges, the people like the person he had been treated as all evening. He could have ended every confrontation with a single word. He could have summoned the guard at any moment. He could have revealed his identity and watched them grovel. He chose not to. Not because he was weak, because a man who has quietly saved entire civilizations does not need a glowing symbol on his chest to know who he is. I have spent my whole career learning to read badges, measuring a being's worth by the glow on their chest. That night, standing in a hall full of the galaxy's most powerful creatures, I learned that the most important man in the room wore nothing at all, and I learned something worse. Every one of us who laughed, who sneered, who looked away, we were not revealing his weakness. We were revealing our own. Humans have a saying. I looked it up later, after I could not sleep. It goes like this. A lion does not concern himself with the opinions of sheep. I think they understand something the rest of us are still learning. That true authority does not need to announce itself. It just waits, quietly, patiently, for the room to catch up.